The Creative Colosseum would like to begin by acknowledging that we are on treaty land, referred to as Treaty 4 territory, and that all people here are beneficiaries of this treaty. Treaty 4 encompasses the lands of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dakota, Nakota, Lakota, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. We respect and honor the treaties that were made on all territories. We acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past, and we are committed to moving forward in partnership with Indigenous nations in the spirit of reconciliation and collaboration.
Welcome back for those of you who are joining live from the Twitch stream. For those of you who are listening to the podcast, this is going to be a brand new podcast, probably a different day.
This was a different day. It's a whole new episode. It's like you traveled. We're traveling into the future.
Yes. So maybe you were on a walking your dog in the last one, but now you're making pasta for this one. So there's a totally different energy.
Specifically pasta. This is a pasta. This is a pasta podcast. Yeah.
Yeah, this is what happens when you're slightly hungry, I guess.
Yes.
So just to reintroduce ourselves, I'm Allysia. I am a piano teacher, musician, and I'm going to just go ahead and call myself a writer, even though I'm not I don't think I'm an adequate writer yet, but I'm writing. I'm writing an honors paper.
Counts. I've written a bit too, so I'll call myself a writer.
Good. That's all it takes.
My name is David Roman. I'll give you a much shorter introduction than I did last episode, but I'm an audio engineer, music producer, podcast producer, live stream person, Twitch personality. I don't know. I'm a lot of different things. So,
and as we learned from the last episode, lone wolf extraordinaire.
Lone wolf. Yes. I can do everything by myself. I don't need anybody else.
That's the perfect plan.
That's
not what we said last episode.
Yeah.
So what's this one about?
What is this one about? Well, it's called 20 plus years of songwriting. For those of you in the stream, you can obviously see the title.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The plus is because we are different people who have had different amounts of time with songwriting.
Yes.
Yours is longer than mine. But yeah, I think our topic today is largely going to be how our approach to songwriting has changed over the many years that we've been doing it.
Yeah. And 20 plus years is like a long time.
Yeah. We've seen some eras. We've seen some kingdoms rise and fall.
Yeah. Kingdoms rise and fall.
Well, the main fall is indie rock.
Yeah.
Indie rock died in our time.
Yeah, it's like kind of here, but it's not.
Guitars really died.
Yeah. And then,
coming back a little, maybe.
We have a lot to talk about. We have a lot to talk about. So yes, but before we get to that, before we continue on, I'll just say quickly, head over to our socials. We're on Instagram, we're on TikTok, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube.
I don't think we posted anything on TikTok. We've got to figure that one out still.
But we will. Things are coming out. By the time you hear this, if you're listening, we're gonna have content.
Okay.
So yeah, head on over. Our handle everywhere is at Creative Colosseum, and feel free to follow along, like and subscribe. All those things you do, especially on Twitch, if you follow, that's a big help. It doesn't cost you anything. And yeah, we'll head to our first ad break where you can hear more of myself. Hi, I'm David Roman from Roman Music YQR. Are you looking for affordable music production services without sacrificing sonic quality? Maybe you're a filmmaker who's looking to heighten the emotional resonance of your film with original music. I can do both of those things for you. I specialize in recording, mixing, mastering, and music composition. I've been at it for over 20 years in various genres like metal, rock, hip-hop, ambient, electronic, and dance music. I'm pretty confident that I can take your project to the next level, and honestly, I just love collaborating with new people. You can email me at romanmusic.yqr@gmail.com, or if you want to see more of my past work, you can look at soundcloud.com/romanmusicyqr. I'm looking forward to hearing from you, and I'm looking forward to collaborating. Roman Music YQR, moody music for the masses.
Very nice.
There you go.
Good to know more about you and what you're working on.
Yes, Roman Music YQR. Hit me up if you need any work done.
All right. So songwriting, 20 plus years. I thought a good way to start today's podcast off would be to talk about our own songwriting journeys very briefly. We don't need to get into like the epic story time, but I'd like to know how long you've been working on music for.
Right.
And basically your rough musical timeline.
Wow. Okay. Well, back in 19 dickety, no, pretty much.
That's what it feels like.
Pretty much though.
Yep.
I can remember being a small child and like fiddling around with instruments. Like that's my first thing is, being 5 or 6 or however old that was, and I was learning actually on the Bontempi keyboard. I don't know if you remember those air synthesizers. I don't know. They were like air, like you push them and they were keyboards and they play with air and they sound like an organ. Like it's, I don't know.
I have no idea. I've never used one.
I can't even remember what specifically kind of instrument it is, but I used to play around on that a lot. And actually, so my very first experience with songwriting was on one of those. And I know I was young and I was like fiddling around with things. So even though I say like I have about a little over 20 years of experience, I technically started when I was very little.
Our cutoff specifically for the number that we decided for this episode was, when did you start showing your music in a meaningful way?
Yes, exactly.
As in playing shows and such.
Hey, I was playing shows for my family. You know, I was I was
a 5-year-old.
I was. But anyway, so that's my first like dabbling thing with it. So I think I've always had like a little bit of an interest in doing that. It wasn't until I was in high school that I actually found other like real avenues to experience that. And I wish I could remember like all the specifics of it, but it's really hard. But I do remember the first ever like real song I wrote with somebody else was, I know the last episode we mentioned that Rob Hillstead guy a lot, and it's going to happen again today.
That's going to be our through line,
because he's written stuff with both of us. But my friend Rob Hillstead, shout out to Rob Hillstead. If you watch the Avatar series, you'll see his lighting in there. So anyway,
nice.
On Netflix. But him and I wrote a song for a competition in media studies class, which is ridiculous. And we wrote something, it was called Corporate Nick Fit. And it was an anti-smoking song, because this was a anti-smoking competition. I don't know if the government was putting on, I don't know who was putting it on.
Corporate Nick Fit.
So it was like anti-corporation selling you cigarettes. And it was like kind of punky. And we actually did play that song. Like we changed it and played it as a band later. But that was the first thing I ever really like wrote a song and recorded it, put it down. I think we were using Cool Edit Pro, which is, if you don't know what Cool Edit Pro is, like this is taking
that dates us.
It's taking it back to prehistoric times. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I used that. Well, I guess Rob had it. I don't know who had it. Maybe it was Steve Drieger. There's another guy. There's so many people involved. The point is, we wrote this song. It was complete. It was mixed, and we won the competition. Which maybe we were the only entry. I don't know. I think the whole media studies class might have entered, but whatever. The point is, we won. So our very first song was an award-winning song.
Very few people can claim that kind of notoriety.
Yeah, right. And then from there, it's just like Rob and I think we just kind of fell into the idea of writing together and making a band. And
so Linger would have been the first band?
Exactly.
And that was your main one. So you can find Linger on Spotify and etc. Wherever you access music. You guys have one album out, right?
Yeah, one album and an EP and another single. So there's a lot of unreleased stuff, but yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of where it started. And from there, I mean, it's a very long story to how I got here, but and then
Femme Fragile was your other major project, right?
Femme Fragile. So there's actually a lot of other ones in between there, which is like been really tough to like, I wish I had more to show is what I'm trying to say. I guess like The Criminal Kid was obviously, fairly current project for you, but for me, it was an older project that I had started that you had taken over. Anyway, people are going to listen to this episode and be like, what is going on? We need like a timeline to like, a visual of some sort.
Yeah. Just imagine us with like the map, the crazy map
of our songwriting lives. Yeah. But yeah, The Criminal Kid was a project that I did a lot of. We actually recorded and wrote
none of
things.
Your songs are up.
No, none of them are posted. Yeah. No. And then after that, actually there was another project before that called WMD, which was White Male Dictator, which led into The Criminal Kid. There was a project before that called Test Pilot. Like there's all these different bands that I was in, and we all wrote original music, and none of it is really around for you to hear.
A lot of this was pre-streaming though, right? So a lot of the things that you would have been writing at this era, and I was in a similar era, we would have been making like homemade burned CDs of them to sell at shows, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. That's the thing, like there was a ways to file share online and you could post them, but it wasn't quite the same. Like there was MySpace and stuff like that. But yeah, it wasn't quite the same as now where you have this like immortal record of something online very easily. Yeah. So, I mean, there was the Criminal Kid, there was Test Pilot, all these things. There was another project that you've maybe never heard called Van Gogh.
Nope.
Which didn't ever get past the writing stage. I mean, we recorded we recorded a full album worth. And then the other collaborator, Shelby, who I was with, we recorded 2 separate EPs that were kind of in the same vein anyway. So there's all this stuff from that project that
They've never released.
almost nobody's heard. Like I think there's like a few songs posted on SoundCloud somewhere. And it was really sad and unfortunate because honestly, it's some of the best work I ever did.
Why isn't it posted?
Because it's just not finished. It's just not, the mixing isn't finished. You know, like there's still more to do. I think I do plan to eventually start just one at a time, putting them off. There's a lot of reasons why that project didn't fly, and it was really nothing. It was beyond our control in a lot of ways. So there was that. Then there was another one I have that was called False Face Society. I don't know what it's called now. Like there's a lot of projects. So the only one that's released though, you're right, it was Femme Fragile. Femme Fragile was like my big attempt.
It's a good album.
Thank you. Yeah. Like that was my attempt at really making a comeback, like really doing something bigger and elaborate with a project.
Well, and we released it at very similar timelines.
Yeah.
They were both COVID projects.
They were COVID projects. Yeah. I recorded a lot of it during COVID. So I don't know, like I've had a lot of various band projects. And then through all that, I mean, I should probably add that I was a commercial songwriter, a film songwriter. I mean, I will say I have been prolific, and I can say that confidently. Like I have done a lot.
And that doesn't even count all the stuff you've done for other people.
Exactly. Yeah. Like so much. So, a lot of my work has come out there. I'm like actually happy and content. Like even though I mentioned all these projects that never released, I'm happy and content with the amount of stuff that did finish. Right. Anyways, this is a very long-winded explanation because when I start thinking about my catalog and my history, it's very long, and I'm just glossing over it, honestly. So to where we are currently, where I'm still writing stuff. Like I have a project called Tragic Bronson, when there's one released track, and another one.
I didn't
on
know
the way.
You released one.
Yeah, and there's my individual project is called Roman, which is kind of like electronic music from some of the film work I've done, and then one that I just did because I felt like that's actually been released. So there's some stuff out there that I just put it out for the fun of it, honestly.
You got a lot of different names.
Yeah, I do, because there's just too many different vibes that I enjoy writing under, right? So anyways, blah, 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 blah. Very long story. I'm still writing music today. I'm currently working on more Tragic Bronson, as well as that False Face Society project I was talking about. That's not the name anymore. Very long explanation why. I'm still trying to figure out what my new name is. It might be Kid Call Me. I'm kind of thinking of tying it to the Criminal Kid because it was all the stuff from the Criminal Kid that people didn't really want to write with, and I wanted to. So, yeah. Whew. Anyways, how about yourself?
Well, so yours is definitely 25 plus years.
It's a lot.
It's my number that's bringing it down a little bit.
Yeah.
But like you, I also had early baby steps of songwriting. And in fact, as you were talking about how you were playing your little air keyboard, and you were talking about your first song, Nick, the Corporate Nick Fit. I was trying to think about what's the earliest song that I remember writing. So when I was a child, like when I was 8, 9, 10, I love pop music, listen to the radio. That was my life. And I wrote a lot of pop music lyrics. And so my early songs of those days were pretty much vocal only. Maybe they had chords, but they were like extraordinarily cheesy. So the lyrics that I remember, I'm going to give you the chorus, very brief chorus of one of the songs that I wrote as probably a 10-year-old. I'm going to dictate it also. This is I'm not going to sing it.
This is an exclusive.
There's lots like you know. So before things start, I'm going to go. You think you're so cool, but you are not true. There's more than a million you.
Okay. This sounds like Dr. Seuss in like a good way though. Like it's like that should be in a Dr. Seuss book. I think that's your demographic at the time.
Yeah. Anyway, so we start from nothing and we grow from there.
Yeah. I can't even recall the words I wrote back then. So
yeah,
that's
this
actually
just came
magical.
to me in like a vision of a moment. Yes.
Yeah.
But the first real music that I started doing was with Rob. So we're going to name drop Rob as
Rob
always.
Hillstead again, the Rob Hillstead Appreciation Hour.
Yep. So Cat Has the Key was 17, 18 around there. We were basically making like, I don't know. I was very heavily influenced by bands like Radiohead and Modest Mouse and stuff like that at the time. It was the early 2000s. And we just did like a lot of jamming, a lot of experimental kind of stuff. And eventually I collaborated with Doug and we did, I don't even remember.
Doug
Weak Links.
Slack.
We did
Slack.
Doug, yeah. Yeah, we did the weak links, and that got to the burned CD stage where we had like a 4-track burned CD disc that we would give to people. And then after that, it was pretty much the Criminal Kid.
Okay.
And that's been my musical trajectory. And it's been the Criminal Kid ever since, in the sense that it was working with a group of people, but then it became more my solo project later on.
Right.
So I've dabbled with other artists as well. So I've written a song with you.
Right. We didn't
Back
mention
in the
this.
day.
We didn't mention this.
Yeah. So Dave and I wrote a song right before I moved to Toronto back in the day when I was like, I'm going to pursue my music dreams and move to the big city. What a disappointment that was. But before I went, I don't know, I think I sent you like a random song idea.
Yes. Yeah. I had asked I think I wanted to collaborate with you because at the time I was obsessed with synth pop and female vocalists. And so I wanted to do that.
Yeah. So I sent you this like scrap of an idea. We're like, let's just figure it out on the weekend. And then we got together one weekend and we just sort of figured it out, somehow structured it into a song and recorded it.
Yeah.
So that was really fun. And I also collaborated with a friend of mine in Austin when I was living in Austin, Texas. And we did like I think we recorded 2, but only released 1. It's kind of like I don't know, like dark synth pop kind of thing as well.
Right.
But that's really it. I've been pretty you have a very broad palette of, you've collaborated with a ton of artists and you've had a ton of projects. Mine is the exact opposite. I've been very kind of doggedly loyal in some sense to the projects that I've had, but they've been really long running. I mean, the Criminal Kid I joined in 2009.
Right.
And that would still be my project today.
You definitely have me beat in terms of like you've released 2 full-length albums in one project. I've never done that. Like I tried with Linger and we almost did it.
You have more than enough material for another album.
I do. Yeah. I do. I have a whole concept album that just hasn't finished. And I'm actually really proud of that album. So I like, there's a lot of songs that are kind of done. Some were released, obviously. Yeah.
I'm also just really not desperate. I really want to record another Criminal Kid album. I have a lot of ideas.
Yeah.
And I will get there one day.
See, this is the thing. And you bring up the idea of like, you're having a very like, you kind of stay in this one lane, right? Not like, I don't know if that's the right way of putting it.
No, that's totally the right way to put it.
But yeah, like,
genre-wise too.
Genre-wise,
I'm pretty consistent, whereas you're the exact opposite. You've been in a lot of different genres.
This is my problem, and this might be a good thing to talk about today. And the songwriting thing is that and this will come in the quote that I talk about later. So if you stick around for that segment,
stay tuned for artist quote spotlight.
Artist quotes later. But I have this. I don't know if it's called ADHD. I don't know what it is. I mean, I've never been diagnosed with anything, but I really struggle to like stay in one lane and to like be interested in one thing for too long. So I like this thing, I work on it, I get really excited about it, I'm really into it. And then I just kind of drop off from it. And then I move on to the next thing. And then I want to do this thing and I want to do that thing. And sometimes it's like about trends. Like sometimes I see a new trend. I'm like, oh, I want to be a part of that. I really like that. It's cool. But other times it's just like, I'm just not there right now. And so I don't know, it can be really debilitating as a songwriter to have so many interests and so much focus. As an artist in general, like I'm a multidisciplinary artist, as the intro very, very clearly told you. So holy cow, is it easy to get lost in like the weeds doing everything and never finishing anything, right?
Yeah.
It's really easy to do that.
Yeah. Okay. So that I would probably presume that that's probably one of your biggest challenges of being a songwriter. It's also not just that you're a songwriter, you're also into film and other things like this, right?
Yeah. And like I say, even within being a songwriter, I'm into like so many different genres.
Yeah.
And like, I'm definitely I gravitate more towards like heavier things sometimes or ambient stuff, but then not all the time. I'm kind of into pop and light stuff too. So it's like, I don't know.
But one thing that I think would be interesting to explore, and what I'd like to discuss with you, is how has your songwriting changed? So obviously you've transversed a lot of different genres, but the approach to actually writing a song, is it kind of the same bones of a process, or have music trends changed so much over the years?
They have. Yeah. They have. Technology has really driven how I write music. So when I first started back as a small child on my tiny little dinky keyboard, that's it. I was just on whatever I could find, right? And the very first thing that I ever did to like record something so I could remember it was I had like a boombox with a cassette tape in it, and I would record myself jamming stuff or our band jamming things. And that was it. We had a cassette tape, and that's how we knew what the song was. So if we didn't formalize the song and memorize it, like it would be gone if we lost the cassette tape. That'd be it. So So my process initially was like grabbing instruments, playing around with them, recording it. Sometimes playing those recordings back and going, oh, I like that snippet. I like that thing. I mean, when we were in high school, I'll be completely honest, it was like getting really high and doing that a lot, which I don't think many of our songs came out of that, to be honest. I think we were much better writing sober. If I actually
think that's
reflect
true
on
of
it.
most people.
It is, right?
Despite how you
Yeah.
might feel. Have you ever, just as a side note, have you ever had the experience of having a jam session with a big group of people? This might be a little specific. And you're like, oh man, this is so good. It's really vibing. And then you listen to the tape of it the next day and you're like, oh, okay, this just sounds like we're in a zoo. It's just a lot of clanking and...
Every time we got high and did jams, we'd listen back after and go, yeah, no, that wasn't very interesting.
Yeah.
No, so I have that experience quite often. I think the tape player method was actually served me really well. I even recorded on like 4-tracks, like those old Fostex, I think they're called Fostex 4-tracks. I recorded sometimes on those tapes with multiple mics. Mm-hmm. So I did a lot of that, a lot of jamming, putting down ideas on tape, and then playing them live, that kind of thing, refining them a bit as we went. Until eventually getting into my first recording studio, which was Grind. I want to say Grind.
I remember. Yeah.
Brunswick. It was called Brunswick.
But Grind was one you also did, right?
Grind. So I think the place used to be called something Grind or something. Anyways, that was the first place we ever recorded. We laid it down on ADAT tape. ADAT tape's a very old technology. And yeah, so I kind of think like my songwriting process was like that for most of my
always
younger
influenced
life.
by technology then.
Yeah.
In a way.
And like, again, like jamming and putting things down on tape, putting things down on tape, like that was it. I would come up with a riff, present it to people, jam it out. It wasn't until I became a little older and I discovered Ableton Live and computers became way better. It must have been in university actually when I was doing probably like my early 20s, I was creating new Linger material or finishing off the first Linger album finally that I discovered Ableton Live. I discovered GarageBand and Ableton Live. And then everything changed because now it was like I have everything at my fingertips here. I can demo ideas on my own. I can make a drum machine. I can play a synth on here. I can record a guitar. I can record a vocal. I can put it all in a session and move it around and play with it. And since discovering that, this is how I write now. I put things in a computer and then I play with them. And so I already have like feedback of what it's going to be like on a recording based on doing that. I don't jam as much anymore. And Criminal Kid was the last time I really was like jamming with a band. With the exception of like me and you getting together or myself and Shelby or with her, like one person had an idea and then we built on that. But it wasn't really jamming per se, right? To write, right? Like jamming to write is very different. So I haven't done this in a very long time. It's probably been, I don't know. Well, Linger did a little bit of that in the end. So maybe it's been about 10 years, but I guess the last Linger album, there's one song on there, or last Linger EP, there's one song called Infinitesimal that was jammed out. It was jammed and written. But other than that, I sit at a computer by myself with everything and I just pluck things in and move them around. And then I want it to be like that. Oh, and then I change it.
Well, jamming to write is definitely something, it's a totally different experience.
Yeah.
And I think there's only one track on my last album that was jammed to write. And maybe like a couple moments of others.
Okay.
But I'm always surprised by the ones that come from jams. Are the ones where, so in particular, Dear Disaster, the piano part was totally improvised. Basically, like I just sat with, on my own. So I shouldn't actually call it a true jam, but I just sat with the guitar riff, listened to it over and over and just kind of experimented with it and came up with piano parts based on that. But it's always those ideas that surprise me the most when I listen back to them, where I'm like, oh, how did I come up with that? It seems somehow like it's gotten away from myself a little bit more. Whereas if I'm recording and I've done the same kind of recording you're talking about, where you kind of get your ideas as you go. You're recording and then you're playing with it, and you're recording and you're playing with it. The ones that are born from jams tend to be a little more detached from myself or what I would expect from myself. Maybe.
Yeah. No, that's actually a good point. And that kind of goes back to our episode 1 when we were talking about collaboration and like the surprise and the spontaneity. And that definitely happens in jamming. We, like there is a spontaneity there.
There's a lot of mistakes that happen.
Mistakes.
And I think the mistakes give ideas.
Yeah. Sometimes happy mistakes.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And yeah, it does become less about yourself then. It becomes other people. And for lone wolves like ourselves, like it can be challenging to do that and just let ideas mold to other people's ideas. And So yeah, I mean, like my songwriting process is just so isolated now, and it's so, yeah, it's great. I love it, but it's maybe not as fulfilling as it could be.
But at the same time, writing with the means of just recording yourself is also really liberating. And it's liberating for a lot of people. So a lot of people nowadays are writing music on Ableton or whatever, right? Because you don't need to be a master guitar player or anything like that. You can just, hit buttons and your ear can kind of take you in the right direction. So as I talk like an old person, anytime I'm talking about this, I feel like you're just going to squint your eyes at me like, Allysia's so not hip with the lingo of whatever recording technology is. But I just feel like there's this kind of open-ended, unlimited possibility aspects to that kind of recording, which I think is, or could be really cool. It's not something that I've explored at all. So when I'm recording, my songwriting process is much more, I'll just record like a piano track and I'll just, riff on that for a little while vocally, and then I'll get some ideas and I'll record something down, and then I'll play around with harmony ideas. And the process of recording vocals alone is enough to allow me to calibrate the vocals. Because a lot of times if I just write a casual idea, just me sitting at the piano, I don't have a good sense of how it's actually coming off, what the details are like. But if I record myself, then I can listen to it and be like, oh, wow, the delivery of that is way off. And then I can start tweaking maybe I should go up with that note. Maybe I should add little flourishes. So the instant feedback that comes from recording, I find really valuable. But that's not something that I've ever done with the extent that you have with other instruments.
Yeah. So yeah, no, sorry, I think it started raining, so I'm just hearing rain outside.
There's a noise from afar.
So anyways, I don't know if you can hear it on the podcast, but anyway, that's why I got distracted. Yeah. So I think that's the thing, that feedback, like the whole idea of putting it down and having it there already, and it's easy to manipulate, is like, it's more efficient.
Yeah.
It's quicker. It's like I can hear it in my head and I can just do it. And then I just do it. And then I don't know, like, because I'm in a studio and I have all the gear and stuff like that, I'm actually recording my work to mix it. Like, I can perform it how I think it should sound, and I don't necessarily have to retrack it if I like what I did. Sometimes I get lost in retracking things forever, but I'm kind of curious to hear a bit more about like your process, like how you moved into that process. Cause I mean, like, I know to me, it sounds like you definitely, I know you kind of write on your own and do some stuff, but then there's always that stage where you definitely want to bring other people on and see how that kind of evolves from there too. So,
yeah. So this is another big difference it sounds like just like through the fireplace flute, there's this
there's some rain.
Is it hailing outside? Is there like some kind of storm?
There must be something big going on.
We don't even know because
fine.
we're in a basement.
Anyways.
But when I was one thing that I was noting when I was listening to you talk about how it sounds a lot to me like your songwriting process has developed alongside the technology. Because you were talking about you would jam, but you would also base what you were doing on the tape recordings, and you would use that as a way to develop your songwriting.
Yeah.
And that's not dissimilar. It is dissimilar in a lot of ways to what you're doing with Ableton, but it's the same kind of like technology is informing the process in some way for you. And I find that my journey with songwriting has been a lot more flat in terms of I find my way and I like it and I keep doing it forever is how I tend to be with projects as with my style of songwriting. I have memories of being very young, like 12, 13, 14, and just recording. Do you remember back in the olden days of Windows computers and only being able to record 30-second WAV files?
Yep.
Yeah, so I would record 30-second piano WAV files and use that to come up with vocal ideas. Or I would just sit on the piano and play something in a loop. But oftentimes, I don't know if you find this as an instrumentalist, it's easier to focus on one thing at a time. So if I have a cool piano idea, I'm like, okay, good. I'm just going to play this and then record it. And then I'm going to just hit the play button and sing over top of it until I work out those ideas. And then I merge the two.
Right.
As opposed to just writing and singing and playing at the exact same time.
Yeah.
But that's been my process pretty much forever, ever since the days of 30-second WAV files to being able to use something. I use Audacity now.
Okay.
But a very simple free program.
Yeah, no, Audacity is good. I mean, like, I personally, I wouldn't use it for mixing or anything like that. But in terms of like
It's very user friendly though for this
Yeah,
kind of thing, for just laying down
exactly.
an idea.
Exactly. It's free. So I mean, I don't fault anybody for for going on there. Yeah, you're right. The tech has informed me more, maybe, and that's. I mean, that is like I'm obsessed with tech, and it's my job. I mean, my job is it's called a digital media specialist, and my job is intended to be a generalist in tech. Like, I don't just work on audio. I show people camera stuff. I show people video editing. I show people 3D printing. All kinds of like I'm obsessed with tech. So even like. We're doing a live stream here. You know, we're running OBS, Open Broadcaster, Open Broad. I don't know what it stands for, but it's a free program as well. And honestly, OBS as a software has like impacted my creativity and actually moved my creativity. Like I've enjoyed it so much that I get to express myself in OBS very differently. I get to video edit while talking, while performing, and you know, it's a kind of performance. I get to live stream, I get to do all these things, and OBS can customize itself so easily that I can like do any scenario I can think of on here. So yeah, definitely when I discover a new piece of software, like I change what I'm doing. And
well, there's a broader point I think that could be made about this, in that technology not only shapes the way that we create our music or our art, but it also shapes the way that we think. And you can see this in technological developments such as books, even.
Yeah.
The way that people used to think that books were going to mean the end of people being able to think properly, because so much attention was put to memorizing as a big important part of human cognition. Of course it is. And of course we have probably lost a lot from not memorizing everything now that books exist.
Yeah.
But then the moves further, you know, you can go from books to computers, and the way that every new technology shapes the way that we think, and the depth in which that we're able to think as well. So there's a lot of benefits that we get from shifting technologies. You get a new way to sort of express yourself. It's a different hat on the same person. And I guess you're using the motto of the Enlightenment is to use your own reason as a sort of guide.
I see what you did there.
As your own guide, weaving through all these different technologies, because there is that fundamental core of yourself in there, but the technologies are shaping the way the message comes out.
Yeah. It's actually, I've never really thought about it, to be honest. It's the first time I've ever discussed this very specific aspect of like what I'm doing. And I've always been really grateful to Ableton specifically. I'm not paid by Ableton. This is not a paid sponsorship.
It should be.
It should be. Honestly, no, I wanted to become an Ableton Ninja at one point. There's like a designation you can get.
Oh, it's actually Ableton Ninja.
I think it is.
Yeah.
So there's some kind of designation, and I think I should. I think I should, because I have enough experience with it. But honestly, Ableton changed my life. It unlocked my creativity. Now, when I hear something in my head, when I was in high school, I'd hear things in my head. I'd be writing music in class all the time, and I'd have an idea, and I'd be like, oh, there's this idea. Oh, that's really cool. But I'm in the middle of school, and I have no way to record this, and I'm going to have to put this in my head for hours until I get home to put it down. And so then I would try to remember, and I get home, and by the time I got home, often it was gone. Or else then I would try to record it, and all I'd have is a guitar to record with. So I couldn't put the whole idea down. Now, the idea's in my head, I hear it, I know exactly what I'm listening to. I'm like, oh, that would be this kind of synthesizer. Maybe it's this pad, with this guitar line and this effect. Oh, and I want it to kind of sound like this genre, but like it's instant in my head now. And then I can just go straight to a computer in Ableton, and I can put it all down very quickly, at least the base idea, right? Like the main idea. And then there it is.
Wow. So this is really different from how I think about songs too, because I don't think of songs in their sort of finished form. I don't think I've ever had maybe I have once.
That's fascinating.
But I've never had an experience where I'm like envisioning what the drums and what the guitar and what all the parts, what the synth is going to sound like. It's sort of just this like melodic whisper that I try to like find a home for through some basic chord progressions or whatever. Right. I don't have an imagination for the details. And as we talked about with the creative collaboration video, I think that's fine, because those are the details. I don't envision them beforehand. Other people add them, and then I'm like, oh, that's cool. Yeah, wouldn't have thought about that on my own, because I don't.
Yeah, that's actually like probably the core difference between us and our songwriting. Then is like, you're right. I think as a producer more than I do as just a songwriter. I'm thinking of everything that can go into it and how it should be mixed and all those things, which is great. Don't get me wrong, but I still always have to identify the drawbacks in some of my approaches, because I just want people to understand that there's so many approaches out there. And as you're saying, like your approach of having snippets of things and then building on it, right? Like, is fine. It's great.
There are drawbacks to that too, though.
There are drawbacks to that too. Obviously, you can't get the full piece without other people.
Yeah,
that's the main thing.
You need other people.
You need other people.
And it might not ever manifest as anything interesting either. Because if you can, I just imagine one of the benefits of your approach is if you can envision whatever the audio equivalent of visioning is, I'm not sure, the oral sound of it, then you kind of already know if it's going to work or not. But if you just get like a melody and some harmony, you don't really know what's going to happen to it.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
So sometimes it's just going to be a dead end.
Yeah, actually, that's a really interesting point. I do feel like, there's times I've brought in ideas to a project or to a band, and then I thought that idea was really good. And then as soon as you put everybody else on it, and they flesh it out, it didn't quite work, right? And because part of that is because like I'm writing in a specific style and genre maybe, and it doesn't necessarily make sense with everybody else's influences, which is again totally fine. But then when I do that on my own, you're right. There's very few times when I like really have a solid idea that I put down that I'm not happy with it. Like I'm like, oh, that's a really good idea, and I'm going to keep building on that. It still happens, but yeah, for the most part, I'm satisfied with what I put down.
I think this might be different for you then. One of my core songwriting tenets that I've held for the last decade at least is that for every idea I have, let me say this again. For every 10 ideas I have, one of them will be good.
Oh, okay.
So,
interesting.
Part of writing music for me is going through this disposable idea process where when I catch the vaguest hint of an inspiration, maybe you catch this too, when it's like the song idea in your head, or sometimes for me it's just a feeling, it's like an urge.
Right.
Maybe I watch something and I'm a little bit inspired and I'm like, I want to go sit down at the piano now, and there's just that kind of light, gentle tug. The vast majority of those experiences are just going to result in something kind of bland and mediocre. I'm going to record it anyway. I'm going to like give it my best shot. I'm going to get really into it for like an hour, and I'm going to think like, oh, this is such a good idea. And then the hour will end and Cinderella turns back into a regular woman and the pumpkin is just a pumpkin again. But there is like, I guess having this idea of songwriting as being this frequent high turnover thing keeps me from getting too attached to the ideas, because I'm just assuming like this probably isn't going to be the greatest idea ever. I'm just going to pretend it is for now, but it's probably not, probably going to fall flat, and that's fine. Because I think part of the problem with being a songwriter is being like, it's like your idea is a drug, and you just want to like inhale your own drug or something like that.
Yeah. No, actually, it's funny you say that, and this is like maybe a peek into my personal life, but like I'll put down an idea and I'll record it, and then I'll bounce it down, and I'll listen to it over and over again. It's like I'm getting high off my creation. Yeah. And
it's like, hell yeah, it's good. This is good. This is so good. Let's do it again.
It's not in a narcissistic kind of way. It's like it's very like just personally gratifying, and then
also the wheels turn when you do that.
Yeah, it's true, right? And then I can kind of see where it can go. And I almost enjoy that more than any other part. I don't really, if I release it, I'm like, yeah, whatever. Yeah. Like you can listen to it, but I just like that I did this, and which is maybe a good way to write. Like it's very much about my own personal stuff. It's about, what I enjoy, what I like doing, rather than worrying about everybody else's.
Some kind of external validation. It's a great feeling. But part of that feeling can be a bit of a hazard, because if you don't step back from it and get perspective, you might just be like high on your own music, but it's actually not that good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're just like feeling self-important or something. Because you're going to notice all the cool little details that you did. No one else is ever going to notice or care or think about it that hard.
Yeah.
So it's just, the effect is going to be lost a lot of times.
It does. And over time it is lost, right? Yeah. But then, the other part about like releasing your own stuff, and you've like experienced that with it, is somebody else might not. And And there's always that like kind of like fear of like, you're going to put it out there and you think this is great and nobody's going to care.
Yeah.
And that happens a lot. Like it just does. Like, I mean,
pretty much, no one does care ultimately. Maybe a few people care.
Yeah.
But it's such a like everyone makes music. You know what I mean? There's
These days.
it's a disposable sort of thing. It doesn't have a lot of value.
With the technology now, it's like that's the other thing that's happened is it has become so accessible that it almost feels disposable at this time. Yeah.
Well, and it's definitely like just it's a little bit it's always been this way, but like the commercialization of music plus big business and all of these things tend to drain it of its life force. But that's a dark path. Let's not go down that path.
But a very honest one.
But don't do drugs, kids, including your own songs.
Including your own songs. No. Yeah. So I don't know. Like I think that the real challenge then as a songwriter is like when it comes to getting that satisfaction from the song is then being able to take that and then pushing it to the final stages. I feel like that's the hardest part is like, it's easy to come up with an idea for me and like create something, but then like getting it ready for release, mixing it, producing it, fine tuning it, tweaking it. That's where I get lost. That's the part because I do that all myself. If I had other people doing it for me.
That's what I was going to say. I'm like, this is exactly the opposite of my experience. Yeah. Getting that song written in the first place is the hardest part. After that, everyone else helps me and shipping it out the door is the easy part because I don't produce it.
Yeah, right.
I just listen to what other people do.
Yeah. See, if I could just track something and like have all the tracks down and have it generally there and then give it away, I would have probably multiple albums out by now. But because I'm the engineer and I don't have money to be putting money into every project I do, it doesn't get out the door. The only things that get out the door for me are the commercial stuff I've done.
Yeah, of course, because you have deadlines
I have deadlines and I'm paid for it, so I have to get into that mode and I have to do it.
Yeah,
and that's what's taken priority for me for the last 10 years. And part of the reason why I got out of my business, for those who don't know, I ran a recording studio. I did audio for film. I did film composition, all kinds of stuff. One of the reasons I got rid of that business was to free up some creative time for myself too, because I felt really strangled and I wasn't able to do that with a full-time creative job. It just was really hard. Yeah.
So walk me through, I think it'd be really interesting to know. Walk me through how it's not going to be the same for every song, but how do you write a song?
Okay.
Like start to finish, what's kind of the template of the process?
Man, this is good. Yeah, let's both do this. Man, I don't know. Like, I feel like it's the same every time now in some ways, but like, so sometimes it'll be like, I'll have something in my head and I'll hear it and I'll go, oh, there it is. And then I got to put that down somewhere and I'll record it.
So you open up Ableton Live? Exactly.
Or if I'm not, I don't have access to my computer here, I'm not in my studio, then I'm on my phone and I'm humming it into my phone. Often, honestly, those ideas don't get made. Very few of those ideas get made anymore. But yeah, I'll be on my phone humming something and then I'll put it down. So that's one of the core ways I make a song.
So do you start with a melody? Do you start with drums? Like how do you start it?
It can be a melody. It could be a guitar line. Lots of times, it can be a hook, like a line that I sing that I really like. It'll be that. But honestly, nowadays, like sometimes I'm just sitting at the computer and I'm just jamming out an idea quick. And that first idea comes and then I build around it. But often I'll do that in a way that's like, I know what genre I want to do this in. I'm like, I really enjoy this sad boy trap music now. So, which is not unfortunately, I like it. It is some of the stuff I'm doing. Tragic Bronson is more in that vein. So then, I'll like put down like a basic melody and then a beat underneath it. And then I'm writing lyrics over top of it. I don't really write lyrics first anymore. I used to do that a lot more.
So you're lyrics at the end kind of person.
Most of the time. It might be like an idea or a vibe, but I haven't really written them out that well yet. Sometimes I do. Sometimes having gone through a recent relationship breakup in the last year, definitely pushed the lyrics out of me a lot easier.
Makes sense.
But typically I'm not a lyric person. I'm more,
So when you're writing, do you typically chunk things together in like 30-second increments? As in like, do you write a verse and then you write a chorus? Or do you sort of have this whole thread of an idea done first? Like, okay, this is the general structure, verse, chorus, or whatever, and then put things on top of it like that.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I do that a little more organically. I think I'll write a piece and then I'm like, okay, this section should be this long. It should last like 8 bars or something. And now I need to transition into something else. Modern music has changed a lot of the writing in terms of like, there's a lot of short songs now. And a lot of songs that are the same thing looping the whole time, but just subtly changing throughout. So sometimes that's how I do it now too. Depending on the genre I'm doing or what I'm doing is, it might be like a simple melody, a simple guitar line and a beat. And I'm just kind of looping it and adding something to it here and there and going with it. And even the idea of verse, chorus isn't like that important to a lot of people anymore. Like a lot of the young artists I've worked with kind of just don't even care about that. And like, I keep trying to like help them format their stuff and they're just like, nah, like, they're like, no, this is good. I like it like this. I'm just going to have one continuous train of thought and then like hook at the beginning, hook at the end or something. And that's
This
it.
has an echo with Baroque versus classical music. Baroque music being like Bach era, like 1650s, 1725, that era.
Okay.
Whereas classical music's after that. And one of the big differences is Baroque is like a vibe. It's like
Right.
all those composers were improvisers and they would kind of have a vibe for their songs. So if you listen to like a Bach prelude, it's
Right.
going to, from start to finish, have the same tone. And it might not even have like a hook. It might not have a chorus. It's just going to be kind of the same vibe all the way through. But when you get into classical music, they tried to do like every single emotion in a single song. So there's going to be like quiet parts and loud parts. And there's going to be parts that you return to like a chorus. And it's like a lot more musically varied within a single track.
Right.
Or within a single composition. Whereas Baroque is like riding the vibe. So maybe I hear an echo in that when you're talking about kids these days and their kind of Baroque sensibility is riding a vibe.
Okay, that's like the line of the podcast. Kids these days and their Baroque sensibilities. No pun intended either. No, but no, yeah, 100%. And I think we're just seeing that in modern music. It's just like happening naturally where structure isn't really that big of a deal anymore. Like I feel like when we were growing up in the 90s, at least I think you were growing up. Maybe
I was growing up in the 90s.
Yeah, you were in the 90s. There was like, I mean, obviously there were still shorter songs in terms of like a radio friendly song, but bands were doing a lot of stuff sometimes that were like instrumental and long and kind of weirdly formatted. I mean, Tool became famous in the 90s and they're well known for doing weird timings and weird formats and things like that. So I mean, there was more of that happening, but I feel like now a lot of modern artists just aren't going there. They're just kind of like, it's just like this stream of consciousness that comes out. And then there it is. And not that nobody's doing this, but definitely the stuff people are listening to isn't the really complicated constructive stuff. Like the stuff that's really getting listened to by a lot of people is pretty simple. It's pretty sparse. It's
Going along with that, one thing I've noticed about songwriting, like modern songwriting or a trend that seems to be pretty common is lyrics are a lot more literal than they used to be.
Oh yeah.
So if you're talking about in the 90s with a lot more of that experimentation, the lyrics also tended to be like a lot more abstract.
Right. Right.
Right now, we're in a moment where people are talking about like what they ate for breakfast Saturday morning or whatever in their lyrics. Like it's really specific.
Yeah.
Which is neither good nor bad. It's just an interesting thing to observe, I guess.
Or I mean, like, I don't want to hate on any specific genre, but even like there are some people who are just literally repeating a word over and over again, and like that's like most of the song. You know, it's like I think of like there's Justin Bieber songs like that where it's like you got that yummy 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 yummy, and that's like the whole song. Again, people like this song. I don't. Justin Bieber has been very successful. I'm not going to knock him, but like that's where it is at. You're right. Yeah. It's just like there's not really a lot to that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess I haven't. And this is maybe my biggest flaw is I'm not very attached to lyrics anymore. I used to be. Sometimes I am, but typically I'm attached to like how a song is written and the structure and how it's mixed and those kinds of things.
So is that reflected in your songwriting?
That is reflected in my songwriting.
Being
that's
like a last step.
The lyrics are a last step. Yeah, they're less important. Doesn't mean I don't think I like lyrics. I spend time on them. I try to do something that people can that'll resonate with them or that makes sense. But I've connected more to the song itself, and I don't know. I don't think that's what crowds are doing, though. I think like the mainstream audiences are connecting to the words. This is just that the words are just like you say, they're literal. They're kind of sometimes they're very simple. It's like nothing really or overly sexual or something. I don't know. Like there's something anybody can kind of latch on to easily. Yeah. Yeah.
So your process is basically like kind of an organic push and pull with layering ideas, having a feel for how long something should be before bringing in a change and so
Yeah.
on,
Yeah.
and finishing things off, icing on the cake with some lyrics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. That's most of the time. Again,
What would be like, this is impossible to generalize, but I'm going to make you do it anyway.
Mhm.
What would be like the estimated time for for a song that you write? Like how long would you expect it start to finish?
if I'm not considering the engineering of it,
just till when it's finished, not like mixed master.
because the unfortunate part about that is I am kind of mixing as I write, so it sometimes it gets hard to differentiate.
Well, then you could do that answer then.
Yeah,
with the full production.
I'm going to say without getting the final mix, like sometimes it's about a 10-hour process.
Oh, that's
I
not
would
too
say.
bad.
It's not too bad.
That's approachable.
No, it's the lyrics are the part that takes the most. The longest time for me, or vocals, because I'm gonna and again that becomes engineering and recording because I'm recording them over and over again. And
and this is one difference with when you're kind of programming things on Ableton. I can imagine that vocals would be one of the only live elements of it. So they're going to take like way longer than anything else.
Yeah. The guitars typically are live.
Yeah. If you're doing guitars.
If I do guitars, which I do a lot of guitar lines, but yeah. So I don't know. Yeah, it's not super long, I guess, because I'm proficient and I know how to use Ableton well. I know how to use engineering tools well, so it's easy, right?
That tracks with about how long I would expect myself to take to write a song start to finish. Of course, it's not going to, I don't write in a linear way with my songs. So one thing that I thought would be worth mentioning related to songwriting that I found really effective is, as you say, you're recording your ideas when they strike you. So if you're at the library working and you get the idea, you record it in your phone. The vast majority of songs that I pick up and turn into an album, at least I've done this a couple times, is ideas that have been like kind of gathered over many years.
Okay.
So I don't usually like think, oh, hey, I'm going to write an album. Let's just write a bunch of songs from scratch. It's like I've got hundreds of random scraps of ideas that I just sort of like, oh, these ones fit together. Or I find one, I'm like, oh, this little 30-second ditty, I have an idea for where this one could go. I'm going to finish it.
Right.
So when I say it takes 10 hours start to finish of writing a song, it's not like a literal 10 hours, like let's start the clock, let's go.
Let's get at it. Yeah.
It's sort of like, okay, there was like an hour here when I had this jam and then a couple hours here when I developed it a little bit more. And then the vast majority of the final push, which is figuring out how to, for me, the hardest part is always figuring out how to format my ideas together. What's the structure? Because I can come up with a lot of ideas. I can come up with a chorus. I can come up with a hook or like a little boppy thing. But how do I connect the verse to chorus? How do I have an intro? Those little decision-making details are the ones that I always struggle with.
Those are
hard.
Yeah. I mean, I do struggle as well with that kind of stuff. I have to experiment a lot to kind of get to that point. So like, I guess I want to ask some questions of you because I've been answering all my questions, but like what, so obviously it sounds like lyrics are a big part of what you do, right? Like it is
typically, yeah.
Yeah. Like you, when you're writing a song, are you thinking like, hey, like I have this thing that happened to me or this thought or this idea, and I need to put it down on paper and pen with my words, and that needs a home now. Like, is it kind of like that kind of thing? Or is it like, is it like,
so it usually I don't write lyrics first.
Oh, you don't either?
No,
okay.
No, I have before. It's happened, but it's not typical because lyrics, if you just write them and they're not homed in a song, they're sort of like they're hard to make fit to music. But if you have music and you already have like a melody idea, then you kind of figure out what the cadence of the words has to be, what the sort of, is this going to be a 7-syllable kind of line? And you can't really preempt that. It's much harder to set lyrics to the music, I think.
Right.
So what I'll do is I'll have this melody. I'll usually just like la 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 something on top of like I have this melody idea in my head and I'm playing these chords to go with it. And I'm just ba da 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 da, like just whatever vocal gibberish. And then I'll try to work out words with that gibberish in mind. Because that'll allow me to set the words to the right cadence. But oftentimes what I'll do is I have also, I really like using Google Keep.
Okay.
It's one of the many Google family products, but it's obviously free and that's good. It's just a note taking
Oh, okay.
app.
Okay.
So I have it on my phone. I have it on, it syncs up to everything. And on one of my Google accounts is all my lyrics. And so anytime I have a random lyric idea, I'm like, oh, go to my Google Keep account and put it in there.
Right.
And then I have this kind of like backlog of random words. So if I'm sitting here plunking on my piano and I've got this melody in my head, I've got this like archive of random written words. And then I can, oh, this is sort of like a vibe. Let's see what happens if I try to sing some of these words to this. And then the lyrics can kind of evolve from there. Because sometimes I come up with ideas that I think are kind of cool. Like, oh, this is like, oh, I'm having such a deep thought in this conversation. I better write it down so I can write deep lyrics.
Right.
But it's sort of this, yeah, it's really melody driven.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I can definitely say sometimes I'm melody driven too. Like I'll have one little melody in my head and I put it down on a guitar or piano or whatever it is. And then I'm just building off of that and that's it.
But again, an important distinction to make, I think, between the way that you write and the way that I write is that you are working with a lot more. I'm working with a lot less.
Right.
So melody and lyrics are the main things that I do, just because I do three things. I do melody, lyrics, and chords.
Right.
Chords are the least important, but they do sort of frame the feel of everything else.
Yeah. Well, they do. Yeah. They'll create the overall emotion because you're going to play in whatever key and geez, that's interesting. Like I guess when I'm writing then, if I have to be honest, like sometimes the drum beat can influence what I'm doing on the song or the thick bass like almost becomes more important than the melody in some ways. So if I'm like saying to myself, hey, I want to write this like really boisterous, huge trap beat, the bass becomes a part of that. But bass can actually kind of be melodic in trap sometimes, like kind of, like it's close. Because the bass is like the kick and the bass are like changing notes, as they're hitting you hard. So I don't know. I guess sometimes I'll start with that and then that will build things. So
one of my like old woman opinions is that I don't think this carries over at all to modern music, and I don't think it needs to, but I hold it anyway because whatever. It's my opinion. Is if a song can sound good, just piano and vocals,
right,
then it's probably going to be fine no matter what else you add to it. If you add like a sweet bass or whatever, it's just like enhancing the goodness that already exists. But if you don't have that nice sort of like piano vocals that works or guitar vocals that works, that core, the whole thing feels a little flimsy. And again, I want to say that this is like kind of my own, I don't know, old woman opinion, like lady shakes fisted kids on the street kind of thing. Because I think that there's probably a lot of great songs that don't need to sound acoustic to sound good. But it is a philosophy that I try to keep in mind with my own songwriting. This should work stripped down to its absolute bare essentials.
Yeah. Actually, that was a piece of advice I was given by people at Sask Music, I think, when I was young. They're like, oh, like strip your songs down and just play them on acoustic guitar and really see if they're working. One thing that worked well for is when you're working with other members and other people, you can see what's clashing. If you missed something that was clashing, and in an acoustic setting, it's easier to hear that. Whereas if you have like really loud guitars and amps and stuff. So yeah, like writing in a jam scenario, sometimes you do have to like check in with each other and go, oh, like, what are you doing there at this point in time? I just want to make sure we're on the same page with this, right? Maybe we're off key a little bit, or maybe you could do something there that would rhythmically be more impactful. Like maybe you're not hitting with the kick well enough, or things like that. So there's definitely more to in a live jamming writing kind of setting to pick apart and look at. Whereas I feel like in my sessions, it's like solo a track, put two tracks together. What do they sound like? Oh, that makes sense. Like it's so easy to see what's happening, right? To strip it down that way.
So I have a couple questions that I would like to round out this discussion with, and I'm really interested in what your answers are. So the first one, who's your favorite songwriter, if you had to pick someone? And maybe also it's different at different eras in your life, because maybe 20-year-old Dave has a different favorite songwriter.
Yeah. I mean, the obvious and cliche answer for me is Trent Reznor, unfortunately.
No, very fortunate.
Well, I mean, like, I wish I had a more interesting answer. He's just such a like easy answer, because it's like he's been writing for decades and he's written so much good stuff.
Extremely prolific, right. Very diverse.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I can honestly say some of the most impactful songs I've ever heard were from him, right? So definitely Trent Reznor.
So what specifically about Trent Reznor makes him your favorite?
I love the way he arranges stuff. I love like the sounds he chooses, the way he produces it. But then I also love like his voice has this kind of, well, at least in the early days, I think more so, it has this kind of rawness and this kind of emotional weight that other things don't. Like the song Hurt, which if you haven't heard Hurt, I don't know what rock you're living under, but I mean, Johnny Cash covered it before he died. And that's where most people know it that way. But, but yeah, the song Hurt, I mean, just the way he sang that, the words he said, it was like the most, I don't think you could connect with an artist more than you do in that moment even when he sings it live, like playing it live, like you just can't help but cry. Like it's just, like I'm thinking about it now, like it just gets emotional, like it's such a good song. Like it's so, it just touches that core of like people who are struggling,
Yeah.
And like thinking that you'd be better off, like not existing,
Yeah.
And that's crazy. I didn't expect to get emotional thinking about that. See, that's what I mean. Like that's the mark of a good song is like, I can't even think about it without like thinking about how it impacts me. Right. And yeah.
Well, and his decisions, production decisions, are kind of, I think, aimed to draw this emotional connection, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So his voice supports that, but also his artistic choices, try to get this raw roots or core of a feeling.
Yeah, that particular album is really like rough and rugged. And
is that Downward Spiral?
Downward Spiral, and sometimes the vocals are super dry and in your face. I mean, Hurt by itself is just like weird and morbid, and like the soundscape is just clunky and like it's like you're in this old Western, like kind of in the middle of the street, like, and you hear wind and you're just like playing this really beat up guitar. Like it just has this vibe to it that just sounds like the way you must be feeling, you're alone, you're desolate, and you're broken, so yeah, it's like one of the greatest songs ever written, hands down. Like there's no debating that, I don't think. And there's a reason why Johnny Cash covered that. And that was, even his version was like incredible.
Yeah.
Like you could not help but feel how he felt in his last years,
Also, the kind of song that's super stripped down. It's an acoustic friendly kind of, like it works in such a simple way, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. You can just play it with an acoustic guitar and vocals and it still works.
Yeah.
So I guess then conversely to you, then what, like who, there's so many songwriters I could name.
I know,
besides Trent Reznor,
yeah. So I mean, this is a question that would give you a different answer depending on what day of the week it is, what mood I'm in. I really like Ryan. Oh geez, I'm gonna do a bad. This is where I need Google. I like Mother.
Okay.
Particularly
shirt.
Yeah. I'm repping Mother today.
Repping the shirt for those who are listening.
Yeah. So the thing that I'm more interested in is vocals and lyrics because that's what I write. And I find that they've done, I think, like 7 or 8 albums now. They've done a lot of albums. They've been going for 20 years or more now. Is the vocals are continually flexible and surprising. I find more so in their older stuff, but it's really like, I think Mother's lyrics and vocal performances are always really tight. They're excellent performers as well. Like they're really, really tight. They do a lot of really interesting things with harmony, and I'm very interested in writing harmonies.
Right.
But I think they just have such re-listenable value where I can listen to the same song 100 times and still be kind of thrilled by their vocal maneuvering.
Right.
And the choices that they make to keep it like vocally interesting. But like his lyrics are also just like really fun. Like, I don't know. I am unruly in the stands. I am a rock on top of the sand. I am a fist amidst the hands, and I break it just because I can. Like it's such a, I don't know. They have like this nice blend of some of their songs are really painful.
Yeah.
But some of their songs are really just like
they're pretty playful.
Playful. Yeah, exactly. And I really gravitate towards, I think, playful writing.
Right.
Even though I don't really do it myself. I kind of wish I did though. Maybe that'll be the next project.
What was the Hayloft song? I'm trying to lyrically that one's
Yeah. My Daddy's Got a Gun.
Yeah, Daddy's Got a Gun. Yeah. I remember that one being like kind of intense, but like funny at the same time.
Yeah, Criminal Kid did that one. That was really fun.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah, we performed that one.
Yeah. No, I definitely listened to a lot of Mother, so I'm very aware of that catalog. Would there be any like particular genre you think then that, like, I know you mentioned indie rock. Yeah, actually we should go back to that before we wrap up. Is there any particular genre that you think is more like kind of where you think your writing makes sense, or what's influenced you a little more?
I think mostly I live in that sort of indie rock zone.
Yeah.
I'm not, like transversing a bunch of genres like you tend to do. But I am really, lately, or maybe kind of always, it's an undercurrent. I've been influenced simultaneously by like 80s pop music, based on just my parents.
Right.
But also I really like kind of 70s jam style writing, like Cream and Fleetwood Mac and stuff like that. I really like. I listened to, what was that band that was like a super group with like a couple members? It was like someone from the Beatles. George Harrison was in it, and a bunch of other random people. Anyway, they just like really, or Josh Homme did the Desert Sessions.
Oh, yeah.
So I really like sort of jam improvisational-y kind of
okay.
music. So I feel like I might go in that direction.
Okay.
For a future project.
And because of like your piano playing ability and your understanding of theory and stuff like that, like, do you think you could just sit there with piano and kind of just, go with the flow? Like it's almost like jazz improvisation in some ways, right? Like, have you done much of that?
I haven't for many years. That's a being in a band kind of thing.
Yeah. I guess
you got to be with other performers.
Yeah.
That's a dream for another day. I have one more question for you though.
Sure.
What's your favorite song that you've ever written?
Oh yeah, this is a good one. Yeah, let's do this. Can I? How do I
put you on the spot?
How do I pick one? This is the thing is my catalog is very, very big.
For the record, I have no idea. This is buying me time by asking you because I have no idea what I would pick for my own.
Idea.
Yeah.
My catalog is really big.
Okay, how about let's narrow it down to something you've released so people can listen to it.
Okay, yeah, let's say released because there's a lot of stuff I've written that I maybe like better than the stuff I've released. Let's just go with a Linger song. The first album not so much, but the EP that I put out. Okay, Gray and White. I'm gonna say Gray and White is one of the
Linger.
I'll just say one of my favorites. Yeah, Gray and White Linger. You can check it out. I think it's on Bandcamp for sure. I think it's on all the streaming platforms now. Gray and White. It's off of an album called Creatures of Yesterday. Yes, Creatures of Yesterday.
Cool.
I kind of like, honestly, I like everything I wrote for that, but Gray and White specifically was a little bit about this particular moment in time I experienced with somebody where I hadn't seen them in many, many years. And then suddenly we were back together in like my hometown and hanging out and spending time. And in some ways I felt like neither of us had really moved. Like mentally, like I felt like we were still kind of the same people we were, and we're still struggling with the same things we'd always struggled with, right? And so Gray and White is referring to gray and white matter. It's referring to the brain. So the idea was about like us kind of interacting in this moment, and there's this desperation of us realizing that we haven't been able to really change ourselves. And so then I start thinking about like, could we really ever overcome these patterns that have been ingrained in us mentally?
Or are we the same forever?
Or are we the same forever? Like, is this just who we are? And the whole concept album is about transhumanism and technology literally altering our neurology. But yeah, so that moment was really impactful for me because it actually was really desperate for me. I kind of put me back. Like I had a lot of hope before that. Again, like I had changed my life a lot. And I think I went back in that moment and I was like, maybe I'm really not as different as I thought I was. So yeah, I put a lot into this song. I put hours and hours. It was the first song I ever fully wrote on my own in Ableton and really like felt good about it. And then I brought other people on board after, like Rob contributed to it. Again, Rob Hillstead, shout out. Rob Hillstead contributed to it.
Got to name drop him like 10 times an episode.
Him. Sundance Robson, who will be on the show on the next episode, I believe. He wrote the drums and, I wrote the original drums. He came in and like made them better. So yeah, like there was some collaboration in there in the end, but most of it was me. I've never really talked at depth about the song, but it's one that I still go back and listen to and still feel the same things. And I remember my partner like feeling really hurt by that song, like not in a bad way, but just like listening to it and really going, yeah, like I can feel what you're going through. Like it is a struggle. And anyway, so yeah, I don't know, check it out. Like I say, Gray and White. It's kind of
I'm definitely going to.
Yeah, it's kind of it's an alt song. It's kind of like Perfect Circle. It has a Perfect Circle kind of vibe to it a little bit, but it's very all over the place. It's driving. It's rock. Yeah. So now it's your turn. Now you've had some time to ruminate.
There's probably a couple I could have mentioned. I'm just going to go with the one. I was sort of inspired by your take that you were going for something that had kind of an emotional significance to a moment.
Right.
So there's a track on Dear Disaster, which is the second Criminal Kid album, called One More Day.
Okay.
And One More Day was a song that I wrote in 2013 when I was living in Austin, Texas, and feeling really lonely. And I had this sense that my partner was never going to be the kind of person who would ever drop things for me.
Okay.
It was always going to be like, it was sort of just this, like, I don't know, disappointed acceptance of what the relationship would just never be, like, one more day, then I'll think about jumping in with you.
Okay. I see
that
what
kind
you're
of thing.
saying.
Toes in the swimming pool, like kind of like testing the waters of that sort of all in, or it's just the sort of like feeling like there was not this sort of deep interest in who I was, or it was just always this sort of tepid.
Yeah.
So that I didn't have a piano at the time. I just had a crappy acoustic guitar that I bought from a pawn shop, just something I could afford while I was living there. So I wrote this thing backwards and upside down because I'm left-handed, and it's just like the simplest 2 chords, because you make do with what you have when you don't have like your regular instruments and you still need to write. You have to find a way. But I liked the lyrics. I like that it's not really verse chorusy. And I never knew how it was going to translate in the recording process, but I thought it was really cool what Chris and Rob did with it, where we kept it really dry in the first half, but we opened it up to like a wet sound for the second half.
Right.
And just playing around with different textures within it. I don't know. That one's special to me.
I like, I've heard the song obviously because I mastered it. I didn't, again, and this is my problem. I don't engage with lyrics enough. And so it's nice to hear when people talk about lyrics, because then I can engage with them a bit more. I don't know if it's just like my mental bandwidth is just so blown out now, but like the whole idea, like you're saying, like it just, are you is it just one more day? Just push it to the future one more time. Like,
and it has one of my favorite lyrics that I've written in it, which is the reason I forgot that I picked it. Let's see if I can even remember it. Every snapshot lens focused on wanting, hoping just turned into haunting.
Oh, okay. I like that.
So I was like, oh, that's a sentimental lyric to me.
We got, okay, never mind. We got a first time chat. That's a spam. We'll get rid of that.
Yay, spam.
Yay, spam. Anyways, do you think, in terms of the song itself, like, did you see a progression from that moment then, that now you're like I'm assuming you did. It sounds like this is a past partner and things have moved on. Like what kind of progression came from that moment, I guess?
Almost nothing for a long time.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
But the feelings went way back, because again, I have a very distinct memory of writing it, and it's only like way after the fact that you can see where that was going, I guess.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. I guess a lot of times these moments we write about, sometimes they happen, like sometimes you write about something and then the song happens immediately, but other times
it's like way after. You're right.
Right.
Yeah. So that was one where it was in the moment. I was feeling the pain of the moment and I wrote about it in the moment.
Yeah.
So it was very current. But you're right. Sometimes you'll write songs thinking about something from 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you do this, but sometimes you'll write songs about other people. I think some of my favorite songs that I've written have nothing to do with me.
Yeah. I've written from other people's perspectives sometimes too. Actually, the original Criminal Kid was meant to be all the songs I wrote were different characters. Some of them real, some of them not.
This is one of the problems I have with people thinking that lyrics are always confessionals.
Yes, they're not.
They're not.
No, they're not. I mean, sometimes there's a little bit of your perspective in that confession. Like it's something.
Well, and they often are too.
Or not. Sorry, not in that confession. Your perspective in that character or in that not your confession. If that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
I speak English, I swear.
Yeah.
No, just kidding.
And on that note.
So anyways, songwriting.
Yeah. That's where we got after 20 years.
After 20 years, we're still just as clueless as we were.
Yeah, pretty much.
But still putting things out at least. So no, it was really nice to hear
Yeah, I feel like I clarified just by contrast to your approach what makes my approach different, and it made me understand my own approach to songwriting differently.
Same. You actually illuminated things about what I do that I don't even think.
Yeah, I wasn't consciously really thinking about a lot of this before, so that's been fun.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that's definitely made me think is I do need to still collaborate with people sometimes here and there and get that spontaneity that you get sometimes, so.
Good. So maybe there's a butterfly effect from these last 2 episodes for you. Like there's Dave 5 years in the future.
Yeah.
It was because of this podcast.
The 5-year anniversary of this podcast.
Yeah. And you'll be name dropping me instead of Rob.
Yes. It'll be the Allysia Van Betju Appreciation Hour.
Awesome.
Anyways, segment today. We're going to talk about a quote. And actually, this is very related to songwriting because this is a quote that resonated with me with songwriting. So let's put the quote up. I'll read it. If you seek tranquility, do less, or more accurately, do what's essential, what the logos of a social being requires, and in the requisite way, which brings a double satisfaction to do less better. So that's the important part. Do less better. Because most of us, what we say and do is not essential. If you can eliminate it, you'll have more time and more tranquility. Ask yourself at every moment, is this necessary? But we need to eliminate unnecessary assumptions as well, to eliminate the unnecessary actions that follow. And this is by Marcus Aurelius, Roman Emperor from 161 to 130 Common Era. Because if there's anything about us that you would know is that we are really cheesy. And so, of course, I picked a Roman Emperor.
Yeah. Got to keep it consistent.
From the Roman Empire studios.
It was bugging you that we didn't have an alliteration. So you needed to find some other tie-in.
Right. Anyways, so why I picked that quote is honestly the words do less better resonated with me many years ago when I was starting this new songwriting journey of having my tech and having freedom to do my own thing. It occurred to me that because I talked about this problem, I think I talked about it in the previous episode about this idea of like having so many, or maybe it was this episode, I don't remember. I have so many ventures, so many ideas, and I'm like going all these different directions, and I want to do all these different mediums, and I'm multidisciplinary, on and on and on. But I wasn't doing any of it very well because I'm doing so much of it. I'm so stretched. I'm not putting out. So this really just resonated with me, and it reminded me like, no, I need to pull back and I need to really assess what's working, what isn't. I have to pick. At some point I'm gonna have to pick because like doing all this stuff at once is never going to lead to sanity or tranquility, as the quote says. Like I need to have some kind of focus and framework. So yeah, it really resonated with me and it really set me on a course of slowly dwindling myself down. Like I at that point I decided I'm going to focus on audio engineering and production. That's it. I'm going to get really, really good at that. I'm going to stop focusing on filmmaking. I'm going to stop focusing on all these other things I was doing. Like that's my creative venture. I even cut out video games at that point in time so I could get really good at that. And I did less better. I did less better. I focused on that. And yeah.
So fun backstory about, one of the interesting things about Hellenistic philosophy and Stoicism that came from that period is this was like, there's a lot of parallels to modern society with what was going on in Greece and surrounding areas at the time. It was very like tumultuous. There was a bunch of regime changes and there was this just general instability in the air that was completely lacking in the times of Plato, for example, where things were much more like kind of set. So the Stoicism drive for stability, because this is like one thing that's really common among Stoic philosophers is this like tranquility and stability being like main goals, is because it was so chaotic and like no one kind of knew what was going to happen with the world. And that's not dissimilar from now, which I think is part of the reason why that type of philosophical message really resonates with us and why there's this whole resurgence of Stoicism in collective consciousness, just because things are so kind of disorganized and we've got this slide to authoritarianism and all these things happening, that this sort of desire for simplicity, this desire for tranquility is really strong. So I don't mean to detract from your, but more that's sort of I think an interesting context to the quote itself. Yeah. But also maybe like, I don't know if that's at all related to inner drives with wanting to find that simplicity and focus.
I think it's relevant though. I mean, that's one thing about, like, even I was talking about cutting out video games, right? And I'm nothing against video games. I actually play them a lot now. You have
a Twitch channel.
I have a Twitch channel, Nerd Party Gamers. Go check us out. Go follow that. I game regularly, and so does my son. Anyway, it's like the external world is very, like you say, cluttered and disorganized and chaotic. And I think way more so now, like,
than 20 years ago.
Yeah, like you're expected to be on your cell phone all day, every day. And there's so many functions of that cell phone, social media functions, work functions, banking, communication, all of it is all there. And you're just like doing all these things. Like you can really stretch yourself thin so quickly. I'm on Facebook replying to people. Now I'm answering this text. Now I'm going to this work email that's on my phone. Like it's the more you put on yourself in that realm, like the less peaceful you feel and the less you get done. Right. So not even as like an artist, but just as an individual. So it really becomes double important for an artist to carve out that space mentally and literally, carve out time to be able to do the things you want to do. And actually, so this quote's kind of funny because I had an interaction with David Usher actually over this quote. So David Usher from Moist, he's a well-known.
Wait, you had a conversation with David Usher from Moist?
A very brief social media interaction.
Okay.
So David Usher was talking about he was trying to figure out, was he had a kid, what should he be doing? He was like carving out time for songwriting. So he was like waking up at a certain time early in the morning. I think it was like 7 a.m, having an hour before the kid woke up to do some solid concentrated work and then get back to being a parent. Right. And so he was really struggling with like balancing it all. And I was actually going through the same thing at the same time because I had a kid. So I did actually comment about how I had discovered the idea of doing less better. So I need to, analyze my surroundings and figure out what can I drop, and for me, it was, again, video games, other things like that. And he responded. He actually responded.
What did he say?
Just said, "Thanks so much, David." That was it.
Oh,
but he
nice.
looked at it. He clearly had read it, and and so that was like I've had a few moments with David Usher interacting with him, but that was one that was really special to me because it was like as an artist to artist, like we connected for that brief moment. But
nice. Well, I think that's a perfect place to wrap this up today.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for those of you who have been tuning in live. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
I think there's been a few of you, which is just lovely.
Yeah, some lurkers.
Yeah, and maybe bring your friends next time. We'll be back on Twitch in 2 weeks, and this particular episode will go up wherever you access your podcasts in about 1 week.
Yeah, it shouldn't take long to get up. Yeah.
Yep. So for those of you on Twitch, thank you again. For those of you who are listening/watching to the podcast post-talk, thank you for tuning in. We super value your time. We really appreciate it because we're in the whole do less better kind of thing.
Yeah.
There's so much content and there's so much that you could be doing and listening to. And it's just the fact that you're willing to share time with us is really special. So thank you.
It actually says a lot about this podcast. Like we're spending the time and energy on this. So it is something that we thought that was worth doing, right?
Yeah, made the cut.
So we're happy that people who would watch it and listen to it might think the same thing. So
cool.
Don't forget to check us out as well. All our socials again: Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Twitch, YouTube. We're just at Creative Colosseum in all of them. So there will be content there as time goes on, and hit those follow buttons, hit those subscribe buttons because they're free and they help us have more people. So
awesome.
Okay.
Thanks for the chat today. And thank you so much for watching.
Yes. And
/ listening.
For those of you listening, thank you as well. All right. We'll see you next time.
Take care.
Thanks for checking out this episode of the Creative Colosseum. We'll see you next time. The Creative Colosseum is mixed and edited by David Roman. Executive producers are Allysia and David Roman. Gear support provided by Roman Empire Studios. Theme music created by Roman Music YQR. Recorded live on location in Regina, Canada, Treaty 4 territory. Voiceover performed by Sundance Robson. Logo design provided by Danielle Austin. Special thanks Kyle Parkinson, Laura Posada, and Rob Hillstead. The Creative Colosseum is a Nerd Party entertainment production in conjunction with Piano TV. Now get back out there and conquer your creativity.